Imagine a scenario where the United States, the world's most powerful nation, takes control of Gaza, one of the most volatile and geopolitically sensitive regions on Earth. This development would send shockwaves across the Middle East and beyond, redefining alliances, intensifying conflicts, and raising crucial questions about governance, sovereignty, and international law. But what would such a takeover look like? How would the region's geography, politics, and economy be affected? Let's dive into this hypothetical scenario. Geopolitical consequences. If the United States were to take control of Gaza, the first and most immediate reaction would come from the region's key players: Israel, Palestine, Egypt, Iran, and the broader Arab world. Gaza, a small strip of land along the Mediterranean, is currently governed by Hamas and is at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The US stepping in would be seen as a direct intervention in one of the world's longest-running disputes. Israel, a longtime ally of the US, might have mixed feelings about such a move. On one hand, if the US takeover led to the disarmament of Hamas and the neutralization of militant groups, Israel might see it as a strategic win. On the other hand, the idea of foreign control over a region so close to its borders could create new security dilemmas. The Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, would likely oppose US intervention, fearing that it would further fragment Palestinian sovereignty. Arab nations, especially Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, would react cautiously. While some Gulf nations might align with the US for economic and strategic reasons, others, like Iran, would see this as an imperialist move and could escalate tensions. Groups like Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed militias might launch retaliatory attacks, further destabilizing the region. Military and security challenges. Controlling Gaza would be no easy task for the United States. The region is densely populated, with over 2 million people living in just 365 square kilometers, 141 square miles. The US military would need to establish a strong presence to prevent insurgencies, protect civilians, and counter potential terrorist threats. However, the history of US interventions in the Middle East, such as in Iraq and Afghanistan, shows that military occupation often leads to prolonged resistance and insurgencies. Hamas and other militant factions would likely not surrender without a fight. The US would face guerrilla warfare tactics, suicide bombings, and underground tunnel networks used for smuggling weapons and launching attacks. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza, already dire due to years of blockades and conflicts, would likely worsen under military rule, leading to further international criticism of US actions. Economic impact and reconstruction efforts. If the US aimed to transform Gaza under its control, it would require massive investments in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and employment. Currently, Gaza suffers from high unemployment rates, food insecurity, and limited access to clean water and electricity. A US-led administration could bring billions in aid and investment, turning Gaza into a regional trade hub and stabilizing its economy. However, economic development under US rule would come with challenges. Would Palestinians be willing to accept American governance? Would businesses and international donors support US efforts, or would they see it as another form of neocolonialism? If the US managed to create a thriving economy in Gaza, it could serve as a model for peace and stability in the region. But history suggests that foreign occupations often struggle to win the hearts and minds of local populations. The role of international organizations, the United Nations, European Union, and other global institutions would likely condemn a US takeover of Gaza. The UN has consistently supported a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and American control over Gaza would complicate peace efforts. Other global powers, like China and Russia, could use the situation to criticize US foreign policy and strengthen their influence in the Middle East. The US would need to navigate complex diplomatic waters, balancing its relationships with Israel, Arab states, and international organizations. Would Washington try to establish a temporary administration before handing control back to a Palestinian government? Or would it attempt a long-term occupation? These questions would determine whether such a move leads to stability or further chaos. Long-term effects on US foreign policy. If the US successfully stabilized Gaza and improved living conditions, it could boost America's image in the region. However, if the occupation turned into another prolonged military quagmire, similar to Iraq and Afghanistan, it could weaken American influence and drain resources. Domestically, American citizens might oppose the idea of another military intervention, leading to political divisions within the US. In the long run, a US-controlled Gaza could reshape Middle Eastern politics. It might push Israel and Palestine toward new negotiations, or it could inflame tensions and lead to further conflict. It could also set a precedent for other global powers to justify military occupations in disputed territories, altering the global balance of power. Conclusion: the idea of the United States taking control of Gaza is highly unlikely, but if it were to happen, the consequences would be immense. From geopolitical shifts to military challenges, economic reconstruction, and diplomatic tensions, such a move would have far-reaching effects on the Middle East and beyond. Would it lead to peace and prosperity, or would it ignite a new wave of conflict? That remains the ultimate question. What do you think? Would US control of Gaza bring stability, or would it be another Middle Eastern disaster? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.